Obviously we're not in school this week and it's the last week of term, so I'm just going to quickly go over some of the things which you could or should or might be doing with your final week. For the S3s it's quite straightforward. We have our booklet that we've been working through. There are tasks on every other page. A lot of them in the Rome booklet feature YouTube clips. You just click the link and then you fulfill the tasks that come after that. The tasks are reading, writing, some drawing, a little bit of research, some origami, a little bit of baking. Any work that you do, you can obviously upload it to Teams, or if it's in a Jota, you can photograph it and send that to me, either by Teams or by email. I would especially like to see how you get on with the origami. One of those origami pieces is actually very tricky. Or alternatively, your baking. I made the cuneiform gingerbread last week, and I'm sure that you can do better than I did. Again, take a photograph of what you come up with and then send it on to me. It'd be lovely to see what you come up with. Next, my intention when I see you next, whenever that is I want to set up a role-playing game club, or at least I'm looking to anyway. On the screen is the game I have in mind. It's set in ancient Rome. Some of you will know more about RPGs than I do, but if you are interested in something like this, then let me know. Either send me a message on Teams or an email, and we can have a discussion about whether this is the game that we want to play, or maybe we can do some research and find a different one which better suits your interests, or maybe even design one ourselves. Anyway, food for thought. For the National Fives, you're in a peculiar position in that your coursework is done, the exam is cancelled. So we are looking at how do you prepare for higher, really. A nice, easy place to start is this series on Netflix, which the second series is about Julius Caesar, the rise of Julius Caesar, and indeed the fall of Julius Caesar. Very, very easy to watch, factually pretty good. Performance is a little bit wooden, but it's engaging enough. There are questions which I have for these, but I'm going to hold off giving those to you now, because at the moment I really want you to just focus on immersing yourself in that world. What did it look like? What were the different levels of society like? Who were these people? Who were these characters? So that's a starting point. If you want to continue though, the Netflix series finishes I can't give you a spoiler. I won't give you a spoiler. Anyway, at the end of the Netflix series, there's a period of about 30 years which are not covered. But then this series, made by the BBC in 1976, picks up at that point. So it's actually quite a good, reasonably good continuity. I mean, if you forget the fact that it's missing out an entire civil war. Anyway, this picks up with the reign of Augustus, and it charts the reigns of the first five emperors. Performances are absolutely excellent. Script is razor sharp. Production, well, it has dated quite a bit. I often see on the internet people talking about a remake. I think HBO were close to making a remake until Game of Thrones became as lucrative as it became. Nonetheless, I would imagine in the next few years there will be a remake, but the original is very, very good. And Derek Jacobi as Claudius is sensational. If you want to, and this is probably wise because the Greek religion aspect of the higher course it's big, and there's a lot of stuff you need to know, a lot of names, a lot of characters. You just need to know them. And in terms of the Olympian gods, this series on Amazon Prime is a really, really excellent starter. Each episode's about 25 minutes long. And in 25 minutes you get one of the great myths, an exploration of that particular god or goddess or the character, a look at their influence on culture and art. It's really, really beautifully put together. I'm surprised that this series isn't better known than it is, but nonetheless, now you know. On YouTube there is an endless supply of video clips, documentaries. In the top right corner, obscured by my head, there is actually a channel called Invicta. You can see there, it says Let's Visit the Parthenon, History Tour in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Invicta is a brilliant YouTube channel. Great production, good scripts, engaging content. And if you want to learn just a little thing about the ancient world, there are 5-minute clips, there are half-an-hour clips. It really is a brilliant resource. But the BBC documentaries end up there, PBS documentaries end up there. All sorts of stuff ends up on YouTube. What's on the screen is just a suggestion. If you were to simply type in the words ancient Greece or ancient Rome or some aspect of those cultures, YouTube will give you something that would be engaging and that you would learn from. In terms of video games are becoming increasingly sophisticated. The two on the screen are probably the best for ancient Greece and ancient Rome. Assassin's Creed Odyssey, you've heard me go on about it in class. It's a very sanitized picture of ancient Greece, but the architecture is brilliant, the sculpture is brilliant, the details of everyday life, the tour mode, which you can get access to, I think, instantly now, allows you to actually go on guided tours of key sites in ancient Greece. It's an amazing thing, a really, really phenomenal thing. Assassin's Creed Origins, the game that came before this one, has some elements of ancient Rome in it as well, but I think you have to play for about 40 hours before you get to it, and I'm not sure playing video games for 40 hours in order to see a representation of an amphitheatre. I'm not sure you can really justify that as schoolwork. But if you are interested in ancient Rome, Rome 2 Total War is a strategy game based on the Roman Empire. You can play as any number of different rival civilizations. You can play as Greece, you can play as Egypt, you can play as Spain, you can play as the Britons. It's vast. The research is very, very strong, but you will need to slow down and actually do a bit of reading as you go. It's a slow-paced game, but one which, for amateur historians and people who like video games, it really is a perfect wedding. I'm currently road testing a similar game called Imperator, and I'll maybe tell you about that another time. Nonetheless, if video games are your thing, these two have a huge educational content. Both of them are worth your time. So for the hires, your coursework is finished. The exam is cancelled. What next? Well, there are a few things. Some of you have stated an interest in ancient languages. I have a full Introduction to Latin course. If you are interested, send me a message and I will email this course to you so you can get started with it. It's very, very straightforward. And I found it very necessary in my learning of Latin. It was a great first step. So get in touch with me, I'll send you that course. But for some of you, your time with classics will be essentially finished. So it's time really for you to think about what it was that made you curious about taking classics in the first place. And I'm going to suggest some reading. Reading is the most valuable skill you learn in school, bar none. In terms of concentration, in terms of vocabulary, in terms of patience, in terms of, it has a mindfulness, a wellness effect. It is the most extraordinary of things. So I'm going to suggest 7 books for my hires especially, but it will apply to anyone with an interest in classics. The first one, Imperium by Robert Harris, is one of a trilogy of novels about Cicero, my hero. Wonderful. Great drama, quick pace, well told. Great. Really, I mean, the research is very, very good, but it's the story. The story just belts along. And if you read one, I'm fairly confident you'll read all 3. Caesar or Caesar by Colin McCulloch. Colin McCulloch wrote a lot of very, very detailed ancient novels, and Caesar is the one I read first. Detail is the key. It is so in depth. I cannot begin to understand the volume of research that she undertook. A really, really phenomenal achievement. This first book, well, the first book that I read, I'm not sure it's the first in the series, is about Caesar in Gaul and latterly in Rome. Really, really immersive novel. Lindsay Davis wrote a series of novels about a detective called Marcus Didius Falco. They are quick reads, they are engaging, they have a really nice touch of the everyday life in ancient Rome. Thoroughly recommend them. Shadows in Bronze is simply the first one I found a picture for. They're all worth seeing. Underneath My Head, this is bad planning, isn't it? Is a book called A Day in the Life of Ancient Rome by Albert Angela. It's my favourite non-fiction about ancient Rome. It's not about political intrigue, it's not about military campaigning, it is simply about everyday life. And you come away with a sense of the smell of the streets, the noise of the streets. You come away feeling like you've visited the place. I know that it's a kind of a cliche in writing to come away and say, oh, it's almost as if I'd been there. But more than any other book on ancient Rome, that's how I felt when I closed the pages. And dipping in for one of the chapters are quite short. Dipping in for 20 minutes or so is very much like taking a 20-minute stroll around the ancient streets. Lovely. Kirke by Madeline Miller is simply my favourite book, favourite novelisation of the ancient world. I'm not going to say any more than that, except to say it is magnificent. If you read any of these novels, that's the one I recommend most, fully with my heart, because it really does hit you in the heart. Magnificent. Mary Renault wrote a load of ancient novels, some set in Rome, some set in Greece, but The Last of the Wine, I think, was her first set in Greece. I think it was 1950 something, 55, 56, something around there. It's a really good story. It features Socrates and a number of other historical characters. It was actually quite bold when it was written in the 1950s. It has a very strong central plot and theme around homosexuality in ancient Greece, which was quite a daring thing to do in the 1950s. She's got a really subtle writing style, very gentle, but you do have to work to keep up sometimes. And lastly, Stephen Fry's Mythos, Greek Myths Retold. It does exactly what it said on the tin. It's engaging, it's lively, it's interesting. The footnotes are excellent, which is not something you will say very often. If you're looking for probably the easiest read of these 7, then that's the place to start. Those of you who are over 18 can now, of course, watch the HBO series Rome, which is the best, for my money, representation of Rome on television. But it is certificate 18. There we are. So, if you have any questions about work that you can be doing, work that you should be doing, or if you're just looking for advice on where to pursue your classical interest next, you can send me a message on Teams, you can send me an email, you can get me on Twitter at MHS_classics, at MHS_classics. I check that more times per day than is reasonable. Enjoy your last week, check in with me, send me any work, and enjoy your holiday as best you can when it arrives on Friday.